Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast for stage 14 of the Giro. Very unusual stage profile with one, what would be an all category climb, 20k 6.6% climb to 2,000 meters in probably the Tour de France, just smack back in the middle of an otherwise flat stage, coming back from Sierre in Valais in Switzerland, back to the southern side of the Alps, to Italy, to Cassano Magnano. Magnago is how you say it, actually. 197 Ks, worse weather than yesterday, but they did the stage anyway. Saturday stage, it was really with Pedersen out, with Groves out, and just maybe Jayco wanting a reduced bunch sprint, looking like a nailed-on breakaway stage. There was 30 Ks of flat before, including Benji crosswinds, but I don't count them as cross. I mean, they weren't in Italy. They were still in Switzerland in the break formation. So there's still no crosswinds ever recorded in Italy.
Yeah, that's a factual statement, I would say. Now, this breakaway formation was going into the climbing section of the stage already as well, and we see it as really large break forming like multiple parts. We always have this on these kind of stages where if a climb is relatively to the start of the stage, that the break goes in waves, and we see Ineos trying to control certain riders, and we see Arensman, for example, respond on Thibaut Pinot. That goes into the breakaway, which I think is understandable. Pinot is now on 3 minutes and a bit in GC. He's now 10th in GC, if I recall correctly. So at that point, I would say it's normal that Ineos is like, if this guy's in the break, we're going to have to pace hard in this stage. And if we keep it to a breakaway that is on 20 minutes, everybody, then we can give them a large gap. So that was a very logical move, but were you surprised not to see UAE?
A little bit, like maybe McNulty could get in this break, or Ulisi, and they can really pace the climb hard, and then, Ulisi can win from a really small group, or, I was a little bit surprised. Also, EF on back-to-back sort of break stages have not yesterday, but the other days, they're not getting multiple riders in these groups, and that really costs you. They only got one in the group again, and it's really, Ineos were just hoping, that it would be a decent break and they could pace behind with Pucci all day at 200 watts. That was their plan, and eventually happened. Here's the break. Well, actually, there was a counter move, but Trek riders, Mollema, Schoens, and Otto Vergade, sprinters. Gaviria with two teammates, Barta and Verona. Barta and Verona came over in a counter move later. Oldani for Alpecin, Ballerini with Seri for Quickstep, Bettiol on his own for EF, Pascal on the sprinter for Bahrain with Sutlin there for him, Nico Denz on his own, and eventually Israel did have, I think, one in the move originally. I think it might have been Williams, and then Clark and G came across in a counter move with reinforcements, and then there was another move when the break had fully gone from Iolo with one of the Bias brothers and Maestri, much to the chagrin of Ineos, who were like, can you not please? So a big break. Other riders of note would be Meyerhofer, who won Cat 11's road race. He's very, very good, young German rider on DSM. And
is he good because he won Cat 11's Great Ocean Road Race?
Yes, you got to be good to win there.
Yeah, okay. Now, this break exists, and you're seeing, if you're watching the race, a big climb up to 2,000 meters, rainy conditions and so forth, and we see the rain kind of get worse and worse as the climb goes on, I feel like. But did you expect certain teams on the climb to do different things? Because if we take a look at this breakaway, we've got riders that, like, would you want to get over this climb in a group where Gaviria is present, where Ballerini is present, where the sprinting types are present?
Yeah, I was really surprised, frankly. The fact that none of Trek or Israel tried to put the sprinters, which I'll list again, Gaviria, Pasqualon, Oldani, Ballerini, under pressure on that climb when they had multiple teammates was very, very surprising to me, because otherwise, how are you really going to win this race? Like, Movistar did the right thing, pacing a very easy tempo that Gaviria was happy with, but I don't really... Yeah, I listen, G's tired. and this is not a video game, of course, but I
G.
was really. I think if I was Israel, if he had the legs, you go full gas with G on that climb, and then the people that would have been G was 1 minute off going toe to toe with Rubio, Cepeda, and Pino on a high mountain stage yesterday. And if the climb was 5-6%, he would have been with them. There is no one of that caliber in this group. This is a 20 kilometer, 20 Ks, 6.6% climb, an hour. And I don't know who would have been able to go with him. Certainly no one that could sprint. So you then can have a situation, and listen, this is so far from the finish, but then you have a situation where G is in the valley afterwards, and Clark and Williams are sitting in the wheels. And ideally, you'd have someone like Mollema going with him, or someone that G can toast in a sprint. And Trek should also, I just thought, why would you? I know it's far from the finish, but you can put minutes into sprinters on a climb like that.
Exactly. Riders like Barguil, I was also expecting to go in moves like that on the climb and so forth, but we did not necessarily see that. We basically saw a bit of a, I would say, relative standstill between the break and the peloton. We did see moves on the climb from the likes of Davide Baez and Admirai, because as you might know from yesterday, Pinot's back in the KOM jersey. He stole that again from Davide Baez. There's a fight going on there. And in today's breakaway, Admirai was trying to prevent Davide Baez from getting KOM points at the top and failed. So Davide Baez took the points and took back the KOM jersey on top of the Simplon pass here. And the gap just kept expanding. It wasn't 2 minutes anymore. It wasn't 5 minutes anymore. It went to 10 minutes. It went to 15 minutes. And now we're entering the last, let's say, 70 kilometers of the stage. And this is the moments where you'd expect someone to try and anticipate it, because this group is not going to ride to the line with Gaviria and so forth in the group. Because there's teams in here, like, for example, the tracks that didn't do anything on the climb before, that will think to themselves, well, what is Squins, Mollema, and Vergaard going to do in a sprint against Gaviria? So these riders need to anticipate the sprint, need to try and form a group ahead. And it's not Trek that does it. It's Laurens Rex who first pretends to be swimming. He was like swimming through the rain. He was literally doing a swimming motion on the bike. That was pretty amazing to see. But after that, he decided to attack from that group, which it looked like he was going solo for a bit with roughly 65-ish kilometers to go. The gap was indeed 15 minutes. And we see Oldani join first. So there's a group of two men ahead now, and Ballerini jumps to it. And then it takes a bit. The gap kind of enlarges to 20, 25 seconds, maybe. I'd say 20 seconds. And we see the same thing that we saw a few days ago, where Squins missed a break a few days ago, right? Where he wasn't in the front group, and then he bridged to that group once the gap was already 20 seconds. That's because Trek realizes, fuck, we messed up here and we're not in the group, right?
They did, but again, the stage is already over for them, because all of these counter moves are going to have someone quick in it. They're going to have either Ballerini, Pasqualon, or Oldani, or Gaviria in it. And without those guys dropped or put under pressure on the climb, it's like, okay, they don't have a choice. They need to get Schoens in that move. Does Schoens need to work as hard or harder than Ballerini or Oldani in that group? No, he really shouldn't. They have no option. Ballerini and Oldani have no teammates behind, and they're going to win the sprint. So Schoens should be doing less work than them. And the Trek guys get to sit in behind. They all work equally for a long time. The gap goes out because, again, it's 4 strong riders, Rex, Ballerini, Oldani, Schoens, and you see this often pacing against 3 guys behind who are actually weaker than them. A tired Will Barter on the flat, who's a climber. He's good TT, but a bit lighter than those guys. Suterlin, who was strong, and I don't know who else, very tired Verona. So without Pasqualon or Gaviria pulling, they were never pulling that gap back. They just held it first 20, 30, 40, 50 seconds. But today we didn't actually see Group 2 dysfunction, Benji. This was a kind of the opposite. It was good. Everyone's kept believing.
It was a pretty functional second group, although at a certain point I was maybe expecting someone like a Meyerhofer to panic and be like, I need to help pace these guys because otherwise we're not catching the front group. But we didn't really get to that point because the gap kept itself at 50, 40 seconds for a while. And we got to talk about something different for a second. Admirai is in that second group. And Admirai is 18 minutes and 38 seconds behind the Maglia Rosa and GC going into today's stage. And the break has now gained 18 minutes on the peloton, basically, which means that Armirai is closing in on the Maglia Rosa. He's now 17 minutes in front of Thomas on his bike with roughly 50k to go. So he's closing in there. And let's talk about the idea behind whether Ineos would be interested or not interested in trying to give the jersey away towards a Bruno Armirai here for a second. Because let's say Armirai takes pink at the end of the stage. What benefits does that give Ineos? The first thing I think of is the media stuff behind the stage, right?
Yeah, you can just finish the stage, go to the bus. You don't have to talk to anybody if you don't want to. You might not need to do a piss test either. I'm not sure. So you might not have to do doping control. And if you can't piss after the stage, I think, didn't Thomas say the other day he couldn't pee and he had to just go on the turbo and just wait, and Jumbo lent him a turbo for a bit. So that's another one. Maybe you don't have to do doping control because maybe I think the leader of every day probably has to, and the top three in the stage. And then, of course, there's the random checks. So, yeah, there's that stuff. Now, does it mean that Ineos at the start of tomorrow's tricky stage can go, don't worry about it? I'm not sure it means that. But it also, like, why say, hey, Salvatore, drive it a bit harder, please? Why?
Like, there's no real point to it. As I saw no reason except for maybe the prestige of having the jersey another day, which Thomas probably shouldn't care about anyway at this point. So I thought it was likely that Ineos was going to try and give the Maglia Rosa away, and about the control of tomorrow's stage. Yes, it's a Lombardia-like stage. There's 4 medium mountains in it. Yes, stuff can happen. If Armirai takes pink, if I'm Groupama, do I even want to help control? I'd be like, sure, thanks for the Maglia Rosa. We're probably going to lose it anyway. Let's put Pinot in the breakaway and not control at all. That's what I would do if I was Groupama tomorrow.
Pinot wasn't allowed in the break today by Ineos because he's back on, 4 minutes or 3 minutes or something.
But hey, what tomorrow? If Pinot tries to get in the break, will Ineos close it?
Yeah.
So
I know. I'm saying it's not that big a deal losing the Maglia. It doesn't change that much for tomorrow. Pinot also, he had some pretty, there's a lot of finger pointing yesterday about, Cepeda and Rubio, and a lack of maybe reflection on how he could have ridden the climb a little bit differently. But anyway,
for certain.
Amirel could have gone into pink. Anyway, the 4 go up the road. Schoens, let's go into the future because I went for a bike ride in 4 degrees, might add, and high winds, 1 hour, 100 watts. Just keeping the 1500 watts for 50 seconds powder dry.
Proud of you.
Yeah, I know, absolutely flying. And into the last 20Ks, we actually have a couple of climbs, and you can barely see them on the profile because the Simplon Pass basically makes everything else look tiny in comparison to it, but there's actually hills in the final, like 1K, 6%, and there's 2 or 3 of them. And then the finish itself is not flat. It's actually a hard uphill drag. So it's a hard final. Maybe Schoens is thinking, I got to offload these guys here. Because the gap was at 50 seconds, and then we see actually a big move from behind. The group drops, Schoens pushes, drops Rex, him, Aldani, Ballerini. He's doing a lot of work. And then behind, we see a big move from G. First, it doesn't go, but it takes 20 seconds out of the gap, or it halves it from 50 to 25, as much as we can trust them. But it's brought back by the group. And then Meyerhofer, he was pushing it through the corners, great handling. He goes again. And G goes with him. Bettiol bridges across with Dens. And now, what's the opposite of dysfunction? Function. Group 2 function. We have a really strong chase group of motivated riders with nothing to lose. Dens, who just already won a stage, Bettiol, G, Meyerhofer, all tanks. Most of them got a decent sprint. And Group 1 is on 25 seconds. Schoens shouldn't take these guys to the finish. The others don't want to lead out. They're also really tired because they jumped hours ago. And we had Group 1 dysfunction.
Yeah, we had Group 1 dysfunction, and it started becoming closer and closer towards a similar stage like Amstel Gold Race Mathieu van der Poel edition. Remember 2019 when he come back in the last kilometer and surpassed everybody in that final sprint? It kind of started feeling like that in the last 5 kilometers. And we see the gap go to 20 seconds, We see the gap go to 15 seconds. And in that first group, we see, I don't know, I feel like Ballerini was probably actually not feeling that great anymore.
No.
Because
Oldani fucked it.
Yeah, Oldani suddenly like skipped a turn and then still took another turn a bit later. It's like he wanted to skip a turn, but then felt like, okay, I might be skipping too early. So he goes back into the relay. But at that point, you've already caused a bit of dysfunction. People are already looking at you like, what the fuck, man? And
because Skuns was still rolling through. So
Exactly.
softly, admittedly, but I don't know what he was thinking, actually. Because he had the best legs in the group, I think. I had no idea he cost himself. Yeah, but the group behind was pushing. Maybe he was right, because Ballerini finishes a bit closer in the end, but the group behind comes back. Dens is the man to actually close the gap finally for them. We're into the last 500 meters, but Oldani's launched a full sprint. I thought it was a 200 to go. He started sprinting Benji with like 30, 40 seconds left, mainly because he thought he could gap Skuns. He was on the other side of the road. It's very weird. And he's brought back, stops. Dens brings them back. He's got G in the wheel and Bertiol. Dens immediately, Bertiol then launches super early. Dens in his wheel, leads him out. Dens comes around him, goes to the left barrier. G in his wheel. Dens the better sprinter, but it's an uphill drag after a 200k stage. And Dens looks like he's got it, but then G suddenly comes out of the wheel. Dens looks beneath his legs, sees G coming, comes off the barrier a little bit. The diagonal from the barrier to the center painter strip posts up Alaphilippe style so early with G finishing strong. And his celebration, he reaches out and actually hits G in the face whilst G's bike throwing. It all looked like he'd Alaphilipped himself, but he's actually won the photo finish ahead of G and Bertiol. Rex on 1 second in fourth. Actually, really impressive because he got dropped by Skuns. Ballerini 5th, Skuns 6th, Mayhofer 7th, Oldani 8th, Pascal 9th, and Maestri 10th.
Okay. We see a celebration that violently punches G in the face. Now, it's pretty crazy how that group came back last minute, surpassed the group with Ballerini and Safolv. But the moment that I also like to dive in on is there's this moment where when Oldani goes in the first group before they are caught, that Ballerini looks to the floor and looks half dead. And Skuns comes past, and Ballerini jumps to the wheel Skuns and lets Skuns close it. Was that a genius move by Ballerini, or was he just so dead instantly and then realized, I've got something to give, let's try and follow Skuns?
I don't know. It's hard to say whether guys are faking or genuinely tired at the end of a stage like this. And Ballerini's sprint's he's not been in the form that he was in 2021 when he won Omloop in the last 18 months. So,
but
yeah,
he's had the best classic season of the majority of quick step riders, though. Then again,
true. What did he do?
12th in Omloop or something?
6th in Omloop.
Oh.
Yeah, 7th in Dwars Door, 11th in Brugge de Panne, 12th in San Remo. Yeah, he was. Yeah, you're right. He must have won a lot of Group 3 sprints or something. Anyway, of course, I wanted Derek G to win. He's been trying so hard. He hasn't won a pro race. No, he does have one win, the Canadian ITT champs last year, but he hasn't won a race like a road race in Europe or anything.
But mate, the third time he's getting second in this Giro. Yeah. It's like Fred Wright all over again. Like Derek G is Canadian Fred Wright.
Fred Wright loses sprints where he's the nailed on favorite. That's different. He lost the sprint to Harada, man.
That is true, but I will, however, say that Derek G is the man of the people in this Giro d'Italia. He's been by far the MVP when it comes to the breakaways, in my opinion. He's been the guy that came out of probably nowhere for many people. I knew him from playing Pro Cycling Manager, but that was about it. And seeing him in the Giro d'Italia go from a role where he goes into breakaways like any other Israel rider to being probably, I think in your words, the most competitive rider on Israel.
G.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the best rider on Israel.
A low bar, but it's still pretty crazy because he's contracted until 2025, which is kind of unfortunate.
They're lucky.
Yeah. This man is really stepping up, and if there is a super competitivity in this race, then it probably deserves to go to G. That is certain. But by the way, do you feel like that should be DQ'd?
I mean, okay. Should Dens be relegated based on the history of relegations and what gets relegated? No, I accept that. Should Dens be relegated according to the rules and what he did? Yeah. But like I'm like semi-retired, maybe I'm working 3 days a week for the deviation police. Yeah, I'm about to take my pension. But I've long serving. I might have to give the reins to someone else as the deviation. Because Den sees G coming. He looks under his legs twice, and he moves from the barrier, and G has to go further and avoid him, and can't bike throw as effectively, and then he hits him in the face whilst he's bike throwing. So like before the line. I mean, in all seriousness, that is a farce.
And ironically,
he impeded his sprint in 2 ways.
Yeah, but I feel like the celebration punch, that's one that I'm like, that's a pure accident. And even though
I don't care that it's an accident. You take your hands off the bars in a sprint before the line, before the stage is finished, and you touch another competitor, impacting their bike throw. When you put it, because it looks ridiculous, everyone's like, well, Dens would have won anyway. But when you actually spell it out,
he probably wouldn't have.
If Dens doesn't move off his line and doesn't hit G
probably wins.
G probably wins, but then he'd have to still post up early because the post up cost him. But anyway,
one more thing.
Yeah,
we've spoken about G a lot in this Giro, but we haven't spoken about his prophecy mission in this race, which is stealing the Maglia Ciclamino from Jonathan Milan before we get to Rome. Because yesterday was Fern in the Ciclamino jersey. Today he's second. He's now on 52 points from the Ciclamino jersey. He's the closest competitor of Milan. Nico Dens is actually also moving up to 4th position. And ironically, I want to see Derek G just try to steal it away from Milan by going in breakaways, by having Israel pace the entirety of the Trecimo di Levaredo stage to get Milan out of time limit.
Imagine they're both in the Gruppetto and they start driving the Gruppetto harder to drop Milan.
That would be amazing.
They actually should
give everything for it.
Yeah, why not? How many points did he take today? He was on 88 yesterday. Today he took
26?
24 points.
Okay, my math is definitely
He's
wrong.
catching up. I mean, Milan will probably do well in Rome and take points there if he makes it. They probably have to OTL him. I'm not sure. But anyway, back in the GC group, no changes. I'm sure this was why they scheduled this stage for Saturday and yesterday for Friday, we'll never know. But
to be fair, this was a better stage than yesterday's.
Yeah, but the weather was worse yesterday. It was colder and rainy on Simply makes I give up as well. Yeah. What about all the sick riders that shouldn't ride 200 Ks in 5 degrees and rainy? Poor guys. Amiral goes into the pink jersey, a minute 41 ahead of Thomas. Should Jumbo have flicked Ineos, Benji?
I think they could have used Affini for it, because Affini's that guy that they're probably not going to overly miss in the majority of mountain stage. He's useful there before the climbs and on the first part of climbs, but I think Affini spending a bit of energy trying to keep this under 18 minutes wouldn't have necessarily made a difference. But Admiral being in pink, it's by a minute and 40 seconds, so it's quite a bit, eh? Affini would have had to pace. How much energy does Affini need to pace to close
Full
that?
gas.
For how long?
They probably would have to start earlier. He'd have to go hard because Amiral was in the group 3 or whatever. They were going absolutely full to the line. So he can't just moderate. They would have needed to have started at 12 minutes when Ineos were pacing at 12 minutes and gradually let it out to only 15, 16 if they didn't want, and that's probably a lot. And yeah, I think, does it change anything? Because as we discussed, Benji, let's talk about tomorrow's stage. Don't we think Ineos will kind of control anyway? Because that's what they've been doing in this race. It doesn't matter if they're in the Maglia or not. Because if Ineos were really thinking about GC position, then they wouldn't have been doing so much work for Jumbo in the last week anyway.
let's first get this out of the way. If I was Groupama, I'd try and go in the breakaway and not think too much about Admiral trying to hold it to the end of the stage. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But if Groupama doesn't go in the break and focus on the Maglia Rosa, then Ineos might have a bit of help trying to close down riders that might hinder GC or might try and move up in GC to the point that it hinders the first rider, which is Admiral. So in that sense, Groupama might help a bit. But I still think Ineos will have to do the majority of the work because, like, the way Arensman responded to Pinot, they're going to have to do that to a lot of riders. If we take a look at the rest of GC, for example, let's say, I don't expect a Carfi to go in an early move or anything, but who would go in an early move if we take a look at GC? Because, like, will Bora try something with Kemna? Will Butrago go early again? You're right.
Kemna tried to slip in today once on the climb. I thought Jumbo would try get Koos in. Wouldn't that have been the play?
It would have been a play. For example, I think there was a Jumbo rider trying to do something, or he was following Arensman probably. Yeah. So I don't think he was trying to go in the breakaway necessarily, but it would have been a play. If, for example, in this kind of stages today, Jumbo can get a rider that is closer in GC like that, because like you mentioned, in a larger group, then Ineos has to ride all out to keep that closed down. But then again, Arensman could just have controlled it on the climb itself, or Ineos could just have responded by putting Arensman with Koos, and what does Jumbo do then?
But then it still lets Koos take maybe 5 minutes or something.
Yeah, but Arensman too, and...
Oh, if Arensman gets in the break? Yeah. And then UAE will chase, and then Bora will chase, and Bahrain will chase, and that's sort of what happened in the break formation. Anyway, tomorrow's stage, 200 Ks again, from Serenio to Bergamo. I've done a lot of hiking in Bergamo. I nearly died there once, Benji. I was actually stuck in the mountains as in 2014. I didn't nearly die. My hands got a little bit cold, but the podcasting union said I nearly did. No, it was cold. And this is where I learned the power of podcasting. And in the high mountains, because I was always listening to podcasts. I mean, you probably didn't know what a podcast was 9 years ago.
Rude.
Well, they weren't that popular, were they, in 2013, 14?
Well, of course. LRCP made them popular.
That's facts. Anyway, listening to the BS report from Bill Simmons kind of got me through, and got back on piste, and some Italians drove me down the mountain, bought me an espresso halfway down, and yeah, it was glorious. Anyway, 200 Ks, hilly start, first 30 Ks, and then they do a pretty difficult climb, actually, 11.7 Ks, 8%, and that has steeper sections in it. The Valico de Valcava, there's 3 Ks averaging 10.7%, step descent, 20K valley, and then medium mountain climbs, 11 Ks, 5.5%, descent, short descent, 5 Ks, 7% descent. Then what might have a little bit of pave in it, not sure. Maybe I'm making that up. I think I am. A punchy climb, 1K, 7%, flat valley, and then the Roncola, which is 6Ks, 8.4%, and then it levels off at the end, descent. Then near the finish, they do the Largo Colle Aperto. Oh, it's a circuit. That same climb, 1.3K, 7.3%, 4Ks, descent to the finish. So if Vlasov was here in good health with Kemna, Benji, I would be pretty sure Bora would try something on this stage, but he's not.
Yeah.
And right now, I think the best play for them is to hope for the easiest race possible.
Yeah.
And for Kemna to just survive and somehow top 5. And Leknesson will fall out. And someone else falls out and you can top 5. So I think them forcing the issue on this stage, I don't see it. And Jungels has looked a bit, the team, apart from Denz, has looked a bit under the weather maybe. So is this the stage Ineos try something, Benji? They still have 3 in the top 10.
I don't know, man. Like, just to be clear, this is mini Lombardia, basically, right? Because Valico di Valcava was in Lombardia 2016, if I recall correctly, as one of the earlier climbs in that rough circuit at the end. I think Diego Rosa got like second. I don't know who won that edition, probably Chavez, if I recall correctly. And then we've got that final climb here, Roncola Alta. That was in 2021 in Lombardia, if my memory serves me wrong. 2020, something like that. My Lombardia's in the head right now. Haha, I'm proud of that. But that being said, this parkour is also, while it is a medium mountain stage, and while I love medium mountain stage, the valleys between the climbs are gigantic. And for something to happen on this stage, I'm looking at it and I'm like, will anyone risk to go earlier than the Roncola Alta? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't even think Ineos will go earlier. And even though they have multiple riders, even though they have an Arensman and so forth, they would almost have to put him in the breakaway to be able to gain anything from that. And I do believe the break will win the stage. I believe that, you know how I see the stage going out? I see the stage going like this. The break wins the stage, and in the peloton we see Roglic attack on that final bump before the line.
He probably should. He gapped Thomas more than, like, if Gegenhardt wasn't the bridge for Thomas on Fossombrone, does Thomas come back?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, but it was Gegenhardt who was much closer to Roglic than Thomas on that punchy climb. Now, this little climb isn't as hard as that, but I also think Roglic is better on this climb as well. But then, is he really going to go for... It is before the rest day, and so, you know, you're not thinking, well, his real stage is next.
Yeah,
the problem... Sorry, go on.
He had stitches after that last crash, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, because I think Baumann said in Willerflits that he fell on his hip or something, and it was pretty rough.
He said in an interview he was no good.
So, keeping that in mind, I just don't expect Jumbo to risk it all on the stage. Yes, it's possible to have a satellite rider in the breakaway, to go on the Roncola Alta, bridge to your satellite rider, benefit from that, no pain, no glory, dive into descent, tread of death descent, and we go to the line and we see Roglic trying to take some time in that sense, but Ineos are going to arrive with their full team at the bottom of that climb, so good luck getting away 100% there. I do think that Roglic could straight up try and fire away if he was in peak form, but is he that at the moment after that crash? We don't know, so I expect a bit of a nothing burger. I'm hoping wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I just expect the break to win and Roglic should try something on that 1K hill just before the line.
No one has, apart from Ineos, no one has dual leaders anymore.
Yeah,
Haig's out for Bahrain, and Santi doesn't look good to me.
He's tried twice early, which I enjoy, but I don't see the effectiveness in it, and I think that the peloton can control him easily.
I mean, so I'm just seeing Dunbar finished second last on the stage, lost 3 minutes. That he must have changed bike, right?
I don't know.
Let me just... I'm just checking where the other Jayco riders are. Okay, so Dunbar must have finished the stage on someone else's bike because all of Jayco left him behind and they were doing 100 watts, so that can't be right. Sorry. I was just looking through because he's still somewhere in GC, and because his GC results were all messed up. It showed him losing 7 places. I was like, what? Anyway, EF only got 1. Carthy. Bora got 1. Kemner. Bahrain, frankly, I see 1. Caruso. UAE, 1. Almeida. Jumbo, 1. Roglic. So are Ineos going to break ranks or break form and really get... I mean, isn't the option you get Swift in the break and then he gets in there with Arensman? But it's a long way, Benji, because the climbs kind of suit Arensman. Shallow in the middle. But it's 100 Ks in the middle of this stage, right?
Jumbo won't allow that anyway.
And Jumbo's team looks pretty solid.
It looks good enough to control an Arensman at the start of the stage because it's also not a fully uphill start, unless the break forms on the climb itself, which is a bit harder to control. But I think this is just going to be a break stage. And if I look at riders for the break, Derek G is going to win this thing. Are we going to do this every break stage? Because he needs to for Ciclamino, right? He needs to be in the break.
Isn't this a good stage for him? Isn't this the best one of the last 2? No HC climbs, but not a flat finish.
Give the man a rest.
Yeah, he will be tired, of course. I'm going with Seb Berwick to win the stage.
Yeah,
I think he can go away on the 1K 7% climb or on the Roncola. He'll be in there with G. Other options, of course, are Dombrowski. It is hard enough this stage that really you need to climb very, very well. And so we should see Bettiol in there. Oh, Healy's still here, Benji. He'll be favourite,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Healy wins the stage. I'll do it again.
He won Foss on Broe by 5 minutes. If he gets in the break and he's got the same legs, he will cook everybody.
What if Derek G goes in the breakaway tomorrow and the break gets 13 minutes? Then he's in the Maya Rosa.
Can't allow it.
Can't allow Derek G in the Maya Rosa. He's too good.
He is too good too. He's better than Van Aert. I've been telling you. You know him listens. Who else? Do Jumbo try and put Koos in the break? I would.
Try, but I don't think it'll work, so... Shouldn't allow it anymore at this point. He's too close now.
If I'm Jumbo and Ineos aren't going to do anything, I would try put a Koos, a Bowman, a Gloag in the break, just in case someone paces and Roglic kicks it off and gets a gap.
Baumann is a viable option. Hesman could even get in a breakaway, even though he wasn't looking amazing today, I would say.
I called for top 10. He got dropped from a group of 100 yesterday.
But I don't think Sipkas can get in the breakaway. He's now on 11:24, if I'm correct. Yes, that's 10 minutes behind Thomas. That's the amount that if he was in the breakaway and gains 9 minutes, then he's suddenly back up there in GC, and Ineos won't allow that. Or shouldn't allow that.
I don't know. You got to try. It's Sunday stage before the rest day. I'm hoping teams try. I've gone with my boy Seb to win the stage with Derek G as my backup. He's scored like 500 UCLA points this week, Derek G, which is kind of important. Like Israel have made huge inroads in UCI points against poor old Lotto Destiny.
Yes.
This Giro, like crazy.
And the injured.
And Lee's badly, like he needs surgery, right? Like he really hurt himself.
Punctured lung, pneumothorax or something, broken ribs, collarbone. So he's going to be out for a bit and hopes he gets back before the Belgian and sees him. He's going to be close.
I think Eddie Dunbar is the best from the GC group tomorrow. And I think Jayco should try. I'm being serious. I know I was a bit negative about his signing, maybe depending on how much money he was on. And just...
Yeah, but...
Benji, he has always been good in Italian punchy races. He is in the form of his life. He attacked from the group strongly yesterday on a properly long climb. He was better in these sort of races like Giro della Toscana in 2018, Italian circuits. If you really want to put Almeida under pressure and UAE and Leknesund and Caruso, I really think Jayco should go for it tomorrow with him. Okay, yeah, Roglic might beat you at the finish and sure. But if you're playing for top 4, top 3, and top 5, which would be a great result.
Top 5, I think, is viable.
You got to go tomorrow. It suits him really, really well.
Because GC-wise, I'm looking at Leknesund. That will probably drop through slowly in GC in the next week. The Pleasant Islands one will likely have to work for Thomas eventually, so they'll probably drop out as well. Pinot and Carfi will be difficult to fight with, but he's ahead of them if the time gap that he lost, according to the current result, the provisional results, is wrong. If he lost those 3 minutes, then there's something wrong.
No. There's no way.
But, okay.
He's on 2:32. So he's 40 seconds behind Kemna, 1:04 behind Caruso.
Oh. 2:30 true? What do you mean?
That's his gap on GC to Thomas. He's on 2:32 to Thomas.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can put Carthy under a lot of pressure. And yeah, I really think, and Aronsman too, I really think Jayco should go for Dunbar tomorrow. More so than, it makes more sense to me they go for tomorrow than trying to attack Almeida on a proper mountain stage.
Yeah.
So
I think so as well.
That's my view. All right. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. As always, fingers crossed for a good GC action stage tomorrow. Last day before the last rest day. If not, we'll all be going maybe people will be at Mass, and so they will save the break formation for when they get out of Mass on Sunday. Who knows? Until tomorrow's recap, ciao.